Hi everybody, I'm back. This is Laura from Once Upon a Time in JW Land. I wanted to kind of share this question with my audience, and that is, when does a parent decide they're going to stop loving their child? Is it when they're born? They're born a sinner. Or is it when they turn 5 and they go to school and they get contaminated with the worldview and you have to stop loving them? Is it during their teen years when you tell them that they're being a little rebel and you don't love them anymore? Is it when they go off to college or go off on their own or get married? You say, now I'm cutting you off and you're no longer someone I'm going to love? Is it when they pick a career that you don't particularly like, but it makes them happy? Do you then say, I consider you dead to me? Is it when they tell you that they're on the LGBTQ spectrum and they're non-binary, or they want to marry somebody of a different race or the same sex? When do you tell them you no longer love them? When do you voluntarily rip your heart out and tell them that you no longer exist? Yes, you're alive, but in my mind, you no longer exist. I am putting you in this bucket of refuse, and you no longer will have an impact on my life because you don't choose to be part of that community that I follow. You don't. But yet, in JW Land, we were told that if our child is stranded somewhere after no longer being one of Jehovah's Witnesses and takes on a different lifestyle, doesn't matter. If it's not a JW lifestyle, it's the wrong lifestyle. That if they're out in the cold under a awning in the rain and they're cold and they're calling you and you're washing the dishes and you pick up the text and you look at it and you see that it's your child, and you look at it and you give a sad face, and you put it down, and that's it. Or you lean on your husband and say, this is horrible. I don't, want to do this, but I have to because I'm showing my loyalty to Jehovah. So I thought about that. My daughter, when she was around 15, 16, she got baptized with a couple other friends from the hall. And at the time, I was studying with her, with the prospect of getting baptized and kind of getting her prepared. And I did ask her, is this what you really want to do? Because I knew it was a lifetime commitment. And to be honest, I thought if anybody of my children would stick to their guns about their faith, it would be her. And she said yes. And so then I encouraged her and I did everything I could to help her reach that goal and get baptized. It was a great day at the assembly. Everybody hugged her. I just felt like now we have 3 generations: my mom, myself, and my daughter. And that was, for me, a really great milestone in my life and in our family's life, our legacy as Jehovah's Witnesses, so to speak. But within 2 years, when she got close to graduating, I could see there were some changes happening. She was getting more rebellious, more angry, just kind of spitting out that she was going to move out when she turned 18, that, she wanted to live her life and go to college. And this was something that I really didn't discourage and say, no, you can't go to college, but I didn't encourage it. And when she was doing competitive sports, I didn't encourage it. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background again, I married an unbeliever, got disfellowshipped, and then came back because I wanted to raise my kids in the quote-unquote truth. So I found myself in a conundrum. My daughter wanted to move out. And I knew once she moved out, she pretty much would be doing her own thing. And then I really couldn't condone anything she was doing. But my loophole, to some degree, was my husband, because he's an unbeliever and he would still have her come over and talk to us. But little did I know that she was really doing her own research and deciding on her own that this was not a religion that she wanted to be part of. In fact, she wanted to be part of no religion. She was gearing towards atheism. And she was making it very clear that she didn't want to be part of the congregation. You know, she basically did a 180-degree turnaround. She was very active, very jovial, very loving with the people in the Kingdom Hall. And then all of a sudden she would come to the meeting and she would just have this, you know, this stare down and barely say hi to her best friends, which were older sisters. Barely talk to the young sisters that she was friends with in the congregation. She kind of was distancing herself. So finally she sat down with me and she gave me a letter. And I almost took a week before I read that letter. I had a feeling it was a letter I didn't want to hear and didn't want to read. And then I read it and my whole world stopped at that time, because she wrote maybe about a 4-page, 5-page letter, very detailed, you know, just bulleting this religion is misogynistic, this religion is based on false doctrines, this religion is blah, blah, blah. And I didn't respond to her until like 3 weeks later, because I was trying to process it all, trying to figure out what my response would be. Finally, we sat down in the car one day and I told her, well, you know, you haven't really looked at the teachings with an open mind. You know, and I tried to use the same old spiel with her, but she pretty much said, I don't want this. You know, I don't want to be a witness anymore. So I kicked in my JW parent indoctrination and I said, okay, well, then you need to talk to the elders. I think that was the worst advice I could have ever given her. And she said, sure. So we set an appointment to meet with elders, 2 of which were very close friends of ours. And one of them had a family and whose wife had kind of disappeared from the congregation, and he was raising his 2 kids on his own. And the other one was a good friend of ours. He was an elder, and his wife was very active in service. They were just beautiful people, very sweet, beautiful people. And so we met. And then they told us, well, we'd like to meet again. And that became more or less sort of like a pre-judicial meeting. And at that time, I think they told me they wanted to talk to Julie by herself. She had just turned 18 and had finished graduating from school. And I told them, no, I'm going to be there with her, because I felt like even though she was 18, she still needed support. And I was her mom, regardless what. I was her mom. And I was going to be there just to, in a sense, to be her witness and protect her if she felt intimidated, and to make sure that she felt safe when she was talking to them. Little did I know that my little daughter had just a little firecracker under her belt, and very strong, very opinionated, and was able to speak her piece. But when I told one of the elders that I wanted to be there, he said, no, you can't be there because she's an adult now. She's 18. And I looked at him point blank and I said, you know, if I can't be in there with her, I will not support her coming and speaking to you guys, because she needs somebody sitting by her side regardless. And so then he said, well, let me take a look. And little did I know that in the shepherding book there was some information about that, and I could sit in. And then he came back to me and said, well, okay, we're going to let you sit with her because she's still living in your household, and technically you're her head, her spiritual head, because her husband, your husband's an unbeliever. And so then I sat with them, and she pretty much said, no, I'm done. I don't want this. And to be honest, we all it was a crying fest. We all cried. I was trying to be very stoic and kind of support my daughter. And then they said, can we talk to her privately now? And I looked at my daughter and she said, yeah, go ahead. I said, okay, I'll be waiting outside. And they spoke to her. And then they asked me to come back in, and she went to the car. And the brothers started crying. It was just heartbreaking because they felt like she was rejecting Jehovah. She was rejecting the possibility to live forever on earth, that she was giving up her life to Satan. And in many ways, I felt the same way. I just started crying like a baby because I felt like such a failure. And I knew that if Julie moved out, I'd have to kind of take a stand and not really talk to her anymore. So that was pretty much it for a while. And then they came back to me and they said, well, you know, Julie, if she wants to disassociate herself, she needs to write us a letter. And so I went as an obedient JW and went back to my daughter and said, you know, you need to write a disassociation letter. And the very next meeting, she hands me this index card that says, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, and put her name down. And that was it, and dated it. And it was just on a scratched index card. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so I put it in a pretty little card and put it in an envelope and gave it to the brother. And when I entered to the Kingdom Hall, he was on the outside. I showed it to him, and he looked at it. He says, okay, thank you. That was a Sunday. That Wednesday, they announced her. And I asked my husband to that I was going to keep my youngest son, who was, I think, 16 at the time, home, because I didn't want him to experience them announcing his sister is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and all the hoopla that I know goes with it. So I went to that meeting, and sure enough, they announced it like it was, you know, tonight we're going to have a reading. Boop. No emotions, nothing. But afterwards, everybody crowded me, and everybody started crying around me, and they started hugging me and holding me. And, you know, it's sort of like saying, you're so faithful, and praising me for being the strong JW mom, knowing that I now have a disassociated daughter and what that all means. So what does that all mean? I really struggled with it for a few months, and that was my cracking point at which I woke up and I couldn't come back from it. So during that time, maybe about 2 to 3 months, I felt like, okay, our whole JW family network is going to fall apart. I'm not having people over like I used to for, you know, our parties, for our gatherings in our backyard. I'm not going to be able to invite friends over because she'd be walking through the house, and I could not fathom the idea that I would see them look at her, or I'd have to ask her to be in her room while I was having company. It just felt so wrong. And I also felt like they're asking me to disown my daughter. You know, I've been indoctrinated, whether it was written or not written, the unwritten rule, cultural attitude around someone who's disassociated and is an adult. It was really hard to swallow and hard to process because I love my daughter, and now I had to see her almost like The Walking Dead. I was grieving a daughter living in my house, walking, going to college, going to work, and living a good life, kind of doing what someone her age should be doing, exploring her interests, going to the movies with friends, having a boyfriend, all of those things. And nothing is wrong in those things in of itself, because that's what kids her age do. But yet I was supposed to demonize it. I was supposed to make it look like she was living a miserable life. I remember one time I went swimming with one of the sisters from our hall that I kind of befriended, and I wrote in one of my Facebook pages, or maybe to the group, that you know, that I appreciate all the daughters now that I've gained because I've lost my one daughter. I mean, a bunch of bullshit that I was telling myself to kind of convince myself not to look at my daughter as a mom, not to have my natural affection for her. They teach you throughout your whole indoctrination as a kid, because you see people having their daughters and their sons announced no longer one of JW, Jehovah's Witnesses, and you either think, you don't really know if they disassociated themselves, so you think, oh, they want to live a life of debauchery, they want to, gamble, they want to smoke, they want to have, orgies, all those kinds of things. But here's my daughter, wanted to go to college and wanted to work and wanted to devote her, 4 years of her life getting herself a degree. And yet I had to say, when people said, sometimes they would ask me, how's she doing? And I would say, well, I feel so horrible that I said this. Well, I've come to appreciate that Satan takes care of his own. And then I would go on to say, she's doing fine. She's going to school. She's working, 2 jobs. She's barely home because she's so busy. I had to kind of not even be proud of her. And any average mom would say, wow, my daughter's in college. She's so smart. She's beautiful. She's really has her act together. She's working 2 jobs. She's dedicated. She's focused. She's knows what she wants and she's going after it. What mother would not be proud of that? But yet in JW land, you're ashamed of it. You're ashamed that you have a daughter or a son that's living their authentic life. You're ashamed of yourself for somehow not allowing yourself to love your child. And as I woke up, and several months after waking up, I started to feel this huge guilt over me. And I'm still working through that, because I started to realize I raised 3 beautiful children in the congregation. It served a purpose in many ways. It created a community for me as a young kid, and I wanted that to happen for my children. And they did have warm, loving people in the JW community, but it was conditional. I realized that I never was able to fully love my kids because, one, I was taught they weren't mine. They were inheritance from Jehovah, so it was my job to raise them and sort of give them back to him. 2, I could only love them as long as they were serving Jehovah, even though we're told we'll love you no matter what, but we want you to come back to Jehovah. And 3, you never really love your kids first. And you should love your kids first. They should be the most important thing in your life, because you birthed them, you brought them into this world, and you promised them that you would be a good parent to them. So yeah, that's what happened in JW land, raising my kids. And I'm getting better at it. We're all out, and I'm thankful for that. But they do rip you and tell you when and how you can be a parent, if you can love, when you can love, how you can love, who you can love. And that's just totally wrong. That's freaking wrong. And that really woke me up, because I could not stop loving my daughter. I could not abandon her. I could not let her be. I needed to support her. I have a beautiful daughter, and I'd be damned if any religion told me, or anybody told me, that she's not important in my life, because she is, and she always will be. Thank you for letting me share.